everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Blow the Whistle. This is for all of you, all of the music lovers, HBCU band lovers, and you've been on this journey with us as we figure out and who will be crowned Band of the Year. Well, we went from the math ain't mathin' to now we actually have the 4 bands. And I just want to know, are the voice of the people really being heard? And does that align with the band programs we all want to see? So let's discuss. And of course, I got my Blow the Whistle crew with me. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us because what is going on? Where do we even begin? Jay, Portia, what are your thoughts?
First of all, let me go ahead and start by saying, ladies, you look amazing. Just want to put that out there. Got to start right? These finals are in, and I still got questions. I got questions, and that's kind of where I leave it. But I know we'll get into it as we go forward.
You're not wrong. We all have questions, but where do we begin? Portia, what would you like to begin, or is there a start to an end?
I'm not even sure what to say. I have so many questions about how we went from the things that we've seen like through this journey to those top 4 or 5 bands in each of the divisions and how they landed on those top 5 in either category. As we progressed through this, I didn't foresee some of what became the final rankings. So I just want to talk through that.
All right. Well, if you missed it, here are our top 5 for Division 1. We have A&T, Jackson State, Southern, Norfolk State, Prairie View A&M, and Tennessee State. And for Division 2, we have Florida Memorial, Virginia State, Winston-Salem State, Central State, and Savannah State. Now, I think it's important to also mention what the criteria, or I'll say what was in this caption. It says 2 bands from D1 and D2 will be selected from the top 5 based on a number of factors, including the band's availability for competition. Now, what exactly are these factors that they speak of? And I think we should just jump into exactly. It's the fact that everyone's kind of like shaking their heads, don't know what to say. I think we should just start by Division 2, Florida Memorial. After this year, have we seen them enough to be ranked above certain bands? Now, we talked about them in episode 1. They were one of our highlight programs as well, but have they done all that it takes to be in this ranking and in this position? Jay, what are your thoughts?
So when it comes to Florida Memorial, I think that the things that they're doing with that program, I think is really good. From a sound standpoint, from a drilling standpoint, I think that they're really carving out a lane for them that is specifically them. If I had any comparison like that, I would probably say they are the small version of what I personally see FAM used to be, but that's a whole another conversation. But I don't know if we can kind of say that they've been seen enough in the spotlight in order to be able to say that they deserve the spot that they're in. Now, first, and let me say this, kudos to them, kudos to everybody who made it, but that does not deter from the fact that the truth of the matter is that I don't think that we've gotten enough from them to be able to say that they should be in the top ranking. So that's just where I kind of sit with that. And then number 2 is a whole nother question within itself.
I think one thing we all collectively have mentioned is how their program is still growing. They're off to a great start, and where they are and where they're knowing where they came from and where they are now, it's you have to acknowledge their growth. But is it enough growth to have the ranking that they have right now for this celebration, and going to this bowl and who will be crowned Band of the Year? Portia, what are your thoughts about their program?
I think, from when we talked about them before, I've seen good things from the auxiliary. There were some things I liked. I did see some improvement in their flag lines, like timing and stuff, as we continue to watch them. But I don't know. So are we saying that because they're number 1, everything in their program is top tier? Is that the assumption?
That's a real question. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that's what it was ranked as. So again, it goes back to what were these factors of what they were ranked upon? Because we don't know.
I don't know, because we went from getting individual rankings, right,
Mm-hmm.
to this final number, but we don't know what the final tally of auxiliaries was, or is, or I don't know, and how that impacts where they landed. Because I definitely have questions about the band that's ranked number 2.
And I think we all have questions about rank number 2. And the thing with this is, from what my understanding is, and I could be massively wrong, but from my understanding, it was by submission from the directors that they give them out, or the submission of their videos to whoever the judges were. My question or my problem with that is, what if the videos are wildly edited, layering in the audio, trying to make sure that we get the best, the kids have probably done the drill 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then they probably did the best video that they possibly could out of those 3 or 4 or 5 times. Does that give an accurate showing of what these programs are truly about? And when we start talking about that second ranking, don't get me wrong, again, kudos to those programs, kudos to Virginia State being chosen number 2. But I'm going to be very honest, there are a couple bands on that list that I've seen a lot more than Virginia State, and to me have also produced a better product this year.
This is true. Now, let me ask you both this question. Do you think Virginia State versus Florida Memorial is a fair matchup? Because, yes, we might have seen other band programs more consistently than B-State. I know I have as well. But seeing these two bands go head-to-head, would that be fair or no?
I will say from a size perspective, I think it's a pretty fair matchup from a size perspective.
Portia, what are your thoughts?
My question is it supposed to be fair, or is it supposed to be the best of the best?
Ooh, drops mic. I think that's perfect, because we're about to move on to Division 1. Jackson State, they are at the top, but have they done enough to be considered top 2? Maybe I'm going to be biased. I'm going to say yes. What, Portia, let's start with you since you just responded. What are your thoughts about Jackson State?
The set's been setting. They have done, I really like some of the stuff that I've seen from them this year. I think they've even mixed it up some on the field. It's a little bit, they throwing other things in there other than bucking. So kudos to them on that. I think they've done, a great job this year. Now, do I think from a auxiliary perspective, they're the best dance line in the country? I don't know about that, but the rankings say they're at the top. Now, I don't know if that means the whole band or what, but the rankings places them at the top. And I have seen really good things from them. So, though I may not feel like they're number 1, they're definitely top 3.
Who would be number 1 for you, auxiliary-wise?
Dance line-wise?
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, because I'm going to say my top 2 this year would be the Dolls and the Stingettes.
That's fair. I still just want to know what the ranking was. Because we're not seeing how or if dance lines are being factored in. Are flag lines being factored in? Are they being factored in together? Or is this somehow compiled into the overall band ranking? And based off of what we previously have seen with, the rankings for each section, is questionable now, because now we've just eliminated all of that. Yeah, I'm going to take the silence as an answer.
Yeah, these final numbers are just released with no outline that these are the scores that contributed to that. I personally think they should have released whatever those final scores were, for whatever the last judgment was, and then release the overall numbers. But because how do you know where that final one landed everybody?
We don't. We just gave it up to whoever is playing a band god at this moment, and we just taking it for what it is at this point. Jay, what are your thoughts when it comes to Jackson State?
I'm gonna start by saying this. I think Jackson State making it in the top two is actually honestly well deserved. They have been by far the most consistent band, HBCU band, uh, throughout the spectrum of HBCU bands. Some of the greatest fifth quarter battles that we've seen this year have come from Jackson State. I say it all the time. Jackson State and Alabama A&M was one of the better battles that we've seen this year. Jackson State, obviously, Jackson State and Southern, the battle of the bands that they had not too long ago was one of the best. And the list can go on and on. Field show wise, they've been a lot more consistent. Their drills have been really clean. From a sound perspective, they are who they are, and they've done a great job by being that. So yes, do I think that their place is well deserved? Absolutely. But when it comes to all of the other conversations and things like that, there are still some things that are questionable. It just makes no sense to me. And again, this is a little bit off of Jackson State. I'm probably more or less leaning into who is number two. And again, I want to continue to say that there is no slight to anybody. But while I think that the Blue and Gold Marching Machine does a great job from a drilling perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean that lines up with sound clarity. That doesn't necessarily mean that lines up specifically with auxiliary. I think the drums, I think percussion does a great job. But again, consistency across the board doesn't align for me in the sense that they need to be in that second spot.
That's true. And just for anyone that is not aware, North Carolina A&T comes in the number one spot for Division One with 832 points, where Jackson State comes in number two with 808 points. How were they based or what were they ranked upon? We still don't know. And at this point, I doubt we'll ever get the answer. So we're going to go on to our next point now when it comes to auxiliary. Portia, you already kind of hinted at this, right? But where have all the auxiliary, where have they gone? I feel like they kind of disappeared out of nowhere. We haven't seen the ranking for it. And we talked about this like 2 seconds ago, but it's like, is an auxiliary a part of the band?
I just want to point out that what they're saying here is that, and this is a little bit off topic, that North Carolina A&T is 24 points better than Jackson State, 31 points better than Southern, and 41 points better than Norfolk State. That's what this is saying. But from an auxiliary perspective, what I would have liked to have, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, to have seen is the final scores per auxiliary, because it's been a moving target like the entire time that we've been discussing this. Like A&T is number one, but if you look at the auxiliary scores, they're number 4 in this final. Southern is number 1 in that, but it's been a moving target. Jackson had been number 1 in the first one, but they're number 3 now, but they're ranked number 2. I think when they release those final numbers, they should have given us, here are the final rankings for auxiliaries overall.
Yeah.
Drum majors overall. Musicality rankings overall. Percussion overall. Picture and drill overall.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you would be more likely, in my opinion, to be able to follow this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. And that's an issue for me personally. So that's what I was saying. I think they should have not just released final numbers. They should have released cumulative for auxiliaries. Maybe I want to use this to work on my group. Is there feedback? If we're going to judge, most of the time when you have competitions with judging, you get feedback. I haven't received any. What do I need to work on as a coach? So I just think that going forward, I hope they're more transparent. I hope there's more clarity and more insight into what you utilize, what each category's final scores were, even if you do it for the top 5 bands. But if you're calculating and you're ranking these people, you should be able to come up with whatever that cumulative number is based on the score sheets. So I don't feel like that should be hard, but they didn't do that. So in the future, I think it would be a good thing if they did.
I do want to point out for the last rankings that we received, they came out on November 20th. But even with the auxiliary rankings, the musicality rankings, the drum major rankings, all the rankings, they still did not provide a number They just provided us the rank that these schools are in, who came through from first place to 10th place. They didn't provide numbers or anything. They only provided numbers for the overall bands and who was the best out of it. And I think that's questionable as well, because like you said, if I'm trying to be better overall as a coach or in these sections, I want to know what I actually need to be better at. And this doesn't even provide insight or the transparency or even a number ranking to say why this school outranks the next one. Jay, what are your thoughts? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I do. I have one more thing. And even when they released those overall numbers, we didn't get percentages on any of this. On what is ranked, is something ranked higher than the other? Does something carry more weight than the other? So it's still even confusing with those final numbers, in my opinion. But go ahead, Jay.
So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be that guy, right? I don't know who was in the room when it came to ranking the auxiliary, because it was understood to the masses that the people who were judging all of this were former directors. Never really said or never really specified were some of the directors dance directors or color guard directors. The only directors that they mentioned were former band directors. So I'm going to do the thing that I feel like, and see, now I'm going to shoot some shots here. I'm going to do the thing that I feel like they should have done. Because I'm not an auxiliary person, I'm not even going to comment on this. I'm going to say, you know what? Portia, you got it. And whatever you say, I'm going to defer to you.
But somebody didn't do that.
Exactly my point.
Allegedly. Because we don't know. Allegedly.
I think that they could avoid some of the questions that they're getting if they release the names of the panelists. Hey, we do have people who this is their area of expertise. We do have people, we're rotating them. We're so that it's not biased. We are looking for future judges, or we excluded people because they're coaching now. But we don't know any of that.
I mean, can someone come forward and tell us? Like, can we have them as a special guest or something? You know, I think that's the best way. Someone should be able to make a statement, or we invite someone that's been a part of this process to provide some clarity and use the hashtag BTW halftime, as well as ESPN Band of the Year, HBCU bands, and hashtag BTW crew. Because maybe, just maybe, someone that maybe was rotated or has a sitting position there can provide some insight that we don't have at the moment. Somebody will hear us, hopefully, right? We're just going to speak that into existence.
Oh, they're going to hear us.
All right, let's discuss something that everyone is talking about. Reviewing clip, the game day clip. Everyone is allegedly talking about when it comes to A&T not being included or a part of an HBCU conference. Since when has that ever mattered? Let's look at this clip right now.
Simone, who are the two bands that people are going to get an opportunity to see and battle it out here in Atlanta?
Division I, the two bands are North Carolina A&T and Jackson State Sonic Boom of the South and North Carolina A&T's Blue and Gold Marching Machine. Now, the streets are mad because they're saying North Carolina A&T shouldn't be eligible because they're not in the HBCU conference. That's blasphemous. It's the HBCU Band of the Year, y'all. It's not the MEAC SWAC Band of the Year. They're still an HBCU.
Exactly.
So I don't understand. They were saying a MEAC band should have got the priority, but the MEAC band should have stepped it up a little bit. Step the piccolos up. You know what I mean? It ain't A&T's fault that they was out blowing the MEAC.
Now let's review this, because allegedly it's been a talk of the town. Allegedly it's what everyone's discussing in the band world, and at this point, I don't think band people really care about this, and someone that's not in the band world is trying to make this a thing. Does A&T not being in an HBCU conference even matter? Jay, what are your thoughts? Because I need the actual breakdown on how this happened and why is this a conversation? Allegedly.
So I'm glad that you used the word alleged.
Yes.
Look at here. Ain't nobody talking about that. Don't nobody care. Okay? That's if you're an HBCU, you're an HBCU. That's not the issue. So one of the biggest things that I am not going to sit here and be comfortable with is you fabricating a storyline to try to make something go viral. No one cares. Here's the problem. The whole problem with this situation. The problem with the situation is the fact that every single thing that you have done from the beginning of this has been so suspect, and you built up your people, HBCU people, chocolate folk, to believe that this was going to be something extra legitimate. And then what you did was is you halfway did it, you poorly did it, you poorly promoted it, and then you tried to put something on the back end and then say, here's what we're going to give you, some trash, and then say, well, we're creating a narrative that's going to work for you. No, it's not going to work. The problem is you poorly did it, and now we're asking questions, and the community that put faith in your stuff is asking questions. And instead of you coming out and saying, hey, this is what we did, this is where we may have dropped the ball, we probably should have reached out for help, you're trying to cover your tracks. And that's BS. And I think you should do better than that. You are making us as a culture look bad because you didn't handle your stuff better. And that is the complete problem with this whole thing. Ain't nobody caring about A&T if they in the HBCU conference or not. I'm gonna be real. What the heck is an HBCU conference? I'm gonna be absolutely, because there are HBCUs in other conferences, so that doesn't make you an HBCU conference. Yes, we know what the SWAC is, we know what the MEAC is, and we know what the CIAA is. Is the SEAC a HBCU conference? I don't know. Maybe it's, but whatever. I don't know what that means. So you are creating an unnecessary narrative to try to cover your poor tracks. Do better. Because what you've done is, for someone like me, who is a music educator, and many of my music educators, and many of the other HBCU band folk, you're making them not trust the adjudication process when it's probably some of the best things that we need for us, for our programs to grow.
My question is, as this thing has gone along, how many bands stopped submitting? And how many will continue to participate in this with the lack of transparency, the lack of insight, the lack of final scores going forward? What's the incentive? Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, money is an incentive. There's money on the line. But understanding how we get a fair chance at those funds matters. So if we don't buy into this, you won't be successful. So I think treating us a certain kind of way is not a good look. I would like to know. Where did Norfolk State land completely? I want to know where we landed in comparison to others. And I'm sure that other coaches want to know that.
But there's a bigger issue at play. Bigger issue at play. The bigger issue is at play is in every single ranking, and you kind of were hitting on it earlier, but I'm really just going to put it out there. In every single ranking that we have received, except for the last ranking, there has been a ranking for auxiliary, there has been a ranking for drill, there's been a ranking for drum major, there's been a ranking for all of these different things. Where are those rankings? Where are those rankings at? Because we brought it up on the last episode that it made no sense that some of these people who are in these quote unquote top rankings were not in other rankings in these other captions. But now all of a sudden, all of those rankings are missing, and now we just get the top four. Please tell me how that makes sense. And you want us to believe and trust in you. That is the issue.
You set the precedent to give us that information, and now we don't have it overall.
Don't forget the bands that were included, that were somehow added to each ranking and then were taken away. But what were they added for, and what reasons, what voting process, as well as the ones that were removed. But I think this goes also back to what Jay was hitting at. It's a bigger conversation, right? Because now I'm questioning, is this something you are authentically trying to support when it comes to HBCUs? Is this something where it's a genuine connection and a genuine outpour of support? Or is this some type of money grab that we've definitely been seeing across the board since COVID time, since 2020, where all of a sudden people and bigger companies want to latch onto the success of HBCUs? So, I mean, I think there's a deeper conversation here. It's also frustrating when you see an outlet that covers sports and all of a sudden you're talking about an HBCU conference when has there ever been an HBCU conference? But as a sports outlet, you should know that. And the people that you have listing and having these conversations, instead of actually highlighting people or asking people to authentically be in these rooms and have these conversations that work with band programs, that cover these type of band events, that cover these sporting events, because band is a sport as well. We travel, we train, we do all of this. And that comes down to the students as well as band staff, as well as the teachers. And we all have been in multiple roles and filled those shoes. So I think there's a deeper conversation here, and we all have valid questions. The question is, will these be answered? And at this point, I don't even know if our questions will be answered. And then it's the question of, will this event see light for next year?
And honestly, to be very honest, here's another question that is kind of heavy on my brain here. The game is the next day. If I'm not mistaken, the game is not involving any programs that are the Final Four.
Well, why
So
not? Why wouldn't you? Because that's what you would do at one of our games.
correct. So you have the 4 that are performing on Friday, 2 that are performing on Saturday. So in total, you have 6 bands that are not even seeing each other. But it's supposed to be a battle of the bands. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. Why aren't the 2 bands that are performing on Saturday invited for Friday?
Even if they aren't competing, I mean, they're in the area. So why not put them on display if it's about truly expanding exposure for HBCU band programs? I think
Correct.
the other thing that I'm questioning about that clip and that whole thing, that whole narrative that was released, was the way it was presented. If what you're doing is legitimate, you don't have to say things like step your piccolos up. I thought that was super weird. Say, we were looking for...
I'm sorry, what? Nah, bro. You know what it looks like? It sounds like someone was trying to read some type of marching band dictionary.
You see what I'm saying?
Trying to apply words to something that don't fit. Like, what do you mean?
It's giving imposter. What I'm saying is, you could have said we pulled the best of the best based on the material we were given, and that's who got invited. You don't have to me, if this argument is illegitimate, you don't have to stoop there by saying things like step your piccolos up, because now I'm questioning you. What's your background? Where did you march?
Hashtag step your piccolos up. Oh my gosh, man. The authenticity is in question. That's what it comes down to. The authenticity is in question.
Well, here's another school of thought here. What if you just weren't able to make it to the battle? Like, you had something going on as a band program and you weren't able to make it to the battle. So do you think, because to me it just feels like, again, and I've felt like this before, but it feels like they just put all the HBCU names up and they were just like, all right, close your eyes, throw a dart, and wherever it lands, it lands. And then you be like, hey, you call them up, hey, y'all able to go to the battle on the 15th?
It did say
Nah,
a
we
number of
can't
factors.
go.
They say that.
So, yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, you trying to find people who can actually make it. Because I can tell you right now, talking to all my people who are still in the trenches doing their thing. First of all, shout out to all the band directors out there.
Mhm.
I am not going to take anything away from you guys. I know the work that you go through, but understanding how this season was, I know it's probably some directors who were like, nah, I'm gonna probably pull out. So how do we know? How do we know that you didn't just call and be like, hey, can y'all do this on this date? And people were like, no, we might need to pull out. But then they called some other folk and they were like, hey, we can do it. So that's who ended up being in the ranking. We just don't know.
Because we don't have those final standings across the board. Maybe that's why they weren't released, because this gives them leeway to invite who gonna sell tickets.
Yeah.
Or it's a profit game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, I admit it, I think Jackson State had a great year. So I'm not questioning that. But you open yourself up to scrutiny and enhanced scrutiny when you do not give things the proper transparency. People want to know. People want to see what it is from top to bottom that you're doing. I was so excited about this because we talk about this all the time. HBCU bands are not adjudicated. You know, there's a lot of band head or fandom or followings behind these programs that say what individuals thinks. I think there's some rankings band of the week that have kind of been coming out through the years, but overall across the board, there is not real adjudication of HBCU band programs. I was super excited about this, but because there's no actual hard score sheets, no feedback, no way for me to follow this across the board, there's no way to utilize this. There's no way to gain anything from this other than one band program will get whatever the prize is. But how do we use this to improve who we are and what we bring to the table? We can't, because that information is not provided.
Hey, regardless of what everyone else is doing, we gonna make sure to highlight our band programs the way that we should. So for our highlight today, we have Texas Southern University, known as the Ocean of Soul. The band at Texas Southern University was organized at Houston College for Negroes during the school year of 1945 through 1946. At this time, the veterans were returning from World War II. Many were also enrolling into this new school of higher education. Mr. Allen E. Norton, acting dean at the time, requested a list of at least 25 names so that a college band could be added to the extracurricular activities. Upon this request, 35 interested musicians organized the first band of this institution. Since the name Ocean of Soul was given to the Texas Southern University band by a local radio show talking about a mountain soul for Houston, it has commanded the interest and attention of the public locally and nationally. The flashy pace-setting Ocean of Soul have appeared at numerous professional football games and continues to be the soul of Texas Southern University. Okay, let's give a round of applause to the Ocean of Soul. Woo! And shout out to everyone that's a part of this band program, past, present, and future. So if you would love your school, your band program to be a part of our highlights, make sure to tag us, make sure to use the hashtag BTWCrew, and continue to blow the whistle with us. Plan accordingly for Friday, December 15th. After all of our discussions, after all of our rankings and your personal ones, we will finally see who will be crowned Bands of the Year. So you guys ready?
All I'm going to say is this is the end of the year. This is the culmination of everything that you have done through this year. So I probably should not see beginning of the year National Battle of the Bands performance. I should see top tier performance, right? Band of the year, correct?
Correct.
All right. So that's where I'm going to leave it.
I'm going to say that this competition till now has been judged based on video submitted from each program. It is going to be interesting to see what will happen in person and where this will land with everybody in front of actual judges.
Hey, well, listen, like we always say, halftime is game time, and we will leave it all on the line on Friday, December 15th. I don't think anyone needs to step their Piccolo games up. They just need to pick all of their games up and leave it on the line during this halftime show. It's Blow the Whistle, Ash Mack here with our BTW crew, and we will see you next episode.